Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with the 2021 series book tag. I had to stop and think about the year because we're getting to that part of the year. This is a tag that was originally created by Mara from Books Like Whoa. I will link her 2021 version down below, and I did this tag for the first time last year and I really enjoyed it. It was a really great way to talk about a lot of the books that I read in series that I have strong feelings about. Most of these are positive questions, but there's a few negative too. So I'm just going to get right into it. For quite a few of these I have multiple answers to a question because I did read quite a few books in series this year that I want to talk about, but I did try and keep, I think I managed to not repeat any answers. So there are going to be some books that could apply to a lot of different questions, but I only wanted to use them for one. Okay, so number one, what is the best series that you caught up with this year that is still a work in progress? And I have a couple of those, although not a ton because I'm not very good at staying caught up with series. But one of them is the Gods of Men series by Barbara Kloss. This is the second book, Temple of Sand. The third one and the final one is coming out in 2022, I believe. And I'm really excited for this. I also want to mention I'm not going to do like in-depth summaries for these books because I have so many to talk about, but I'm just going to try and focus on why I chose them for a particular question. This is a fantasy series I'm really loving. I think the character work is fantastic. The romance is really good. I think the world building and the history of this world is really interesting, and I am forever grateful to my lovely friend Hannah for getting me into this series. I also wanted to mention the Artemis Fowl graphic novel adaptations. These are the new ones. The original story was by Owen Colfer, and it is adapted by Michael Morecci and illustrated by Stephen Gilpin. I say this every time, but if you read the older versions of the graphic novels, please pick up these instead or in addition to, because I think they are so much better. I really love the art style. I love these stories. I gave both of these 5 stars, and we did finally get like an official announcement or like a release date for the Eternity Code, which will be coming out next year. By the way, when I say next year, I mean 2022. I don't know when this video is going up, but when I say this year, I mean 2021. When I say next year, I mean 2022. Number 2, what is the best work in progress series that you are still catching up with? Now I'm hoping to finish the most recent book in the Witchland series by Susan Dennard before the end of the year. I only have a couple days, so I don't know if that's going to happen. But another answer that I have is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is the Regency Fairy Tale series. I read the first 2 books in this series a few months ago and absolutely fell in love with them. This is a historical fantasy series set during the Napoleonic Wars, and I really, really love the characters. Both books in the series, it's a companion series, but both books I have read so far have really wonderful romantic subplots in addition to just really, really wonderful female main characters. I really love the themes, like the focus on doing good in the world and on how having anger is not a bad thing, and in fact it is often very necessary. Yeah, I'm just really loving these, and Long Shadow is the most recent, I think it's called Long Shadow, is the most recent book in the series that I haven't gotten to yet. I was waiting for it to come out, and then I was waiting for it to be more widely available, and it finally is, so hopefully we'll be reading that soon. Number 3, what was your favorite first book in a series this year? And again, I have a lot that I could pick from, but I was trying to only pick each book once. So I went with Touch of Power by Maria V. Snyder. This is the first book in, it doesn't say, I think it's just like the Healer series or something. This was actually a present from my friend Huck at Badger Reads, and I'm really glad because I've been curious about this series for a long time, and I finally read this first book and really enjoyed it. I think the healing magic is really interesting. I think the plot and the politics is just really, really engaging. This is another one that has a really great romantic subplot. I could see some people wanting more from it, but I really liked it. And I'm really looking forward to continuing the series. I actually own the other 2 books, so I'm hoping to prioritize that. Number 4 is, what is the first book in a series you read this year that you think should have just been a standalone, not a series? And this is kind of cheating because this is a book I reread this year, but it's the only answer I had, and I do have strong feelings about it. And that is Wildwood Dancing by Julia Merlier. I buddy read this with Huck again, actually, and we both really enjoyed this, but I read the second book, which is a companion book, Sibel's Secret, several years ago, and it is still one of my least favorite books I've ever read. I hate that book so much. I hate what it did to the main character of that book. I hate the romance subplot or plotline. I hate the way that the setting was framed. I hate all the plot stuff. I hate the villain stuff. Like, I just hate everything about that book, honestly. Didn't like the writing either. It kind of falls into that trap of like when an author is writing from a main character who is supposed to be like really intelligent and scholarly, apparently they talk like a robot, which is just very annoying to me. So yeah, I really like Wildwood Dancing, but I hated Sibel's Secret, and I still firmly believe that this should have just been a standalone if the second book was going to be that bad. Number 5 is what is your most overhyped series of the year? And I just realized that I kind of lied. I think I do have a series that appears here a couple times, but that's gonna be the Morgan Crow series by Jessica Townsend. I am sorry, you guys. I'm just not seeing what everyone else is seeing, and it makes me really sad because I want to love this series so much. I read the second book this year, and I really enjoyed being on a live show discussion for it, so I'm very grateful for that opportunity, but I just think I'm done with this series. Like, I don't like the way that the whimsical stuff is blended with the really dark stuff. I don't think it's done very well. I don't think Morgan is particularly interesting as a character. I don't think the side characters are that interesting. They're clearly supposed to be really quirky and charming, and I just don't feel like they are. And there were just aspects of the plot that are really, really frustrating to me. I do love that this series is getting so many people into middle grade fantasy who don't normally read it, so I'm really happy about that. But I think for me personally, this series is just very overhyped. Number 6, what is a series that you DNF'd this year? And I have a few answers. One of them is sadly the Camelot Rising series by Kirsten White. This is the Camelot Betrayal, which is the second book. I really actually enjoyed this one, and I really, really enjoyed the first book, so I'm happy I read those. But there were some things I was nervous about how they would play out in the third book, so I was thankfully able to find a very spoilery review of the third book, and I would have been livid if I had put all this time into this trilogy and waiting for the books to come out, and then I read the book and that happened. So yeah, very glad I found that, and I am just gonna pretend that these two books are the only books in the series. I do think that if you have different opinions about the characters and the character relationships than I do, it sounds like you might enjoy the third book more than me, although there are some other story issues it seems like, so anyway, just thinking about what happens in that third book, I'm already mad, so I can't even imagine how angry I would be if I had been surprised by that and I actually read the third book. So I'm DNFing that one. And then also, this is one that I really enjoyed these first two books, but kind of similarly, I just don't think I want to read the third book because of various reasons. And that is the 100,000 Kingdoms series by N.K. Jemisin. I loved book one. It was one of my favorite books. I think last year is when I read it. And I really enjoyed The Broken Kingdoms, which is a companion book that I read this year. The third book is another companion book, so it follows a different main character. And I just don't think I have any interest in following that character as a main character. I think as a side character they're interesting, but I don't really want to read a whole book about them or from their perspective. And I also read some things in reviews about some weird some weird romantic subplots that personally make me really uncomfortable, age-wise, and I just don't want to read that. So yeah, I really enjoyed these first couple books, and I want to read pretty much everything else that N.K. Jemisin has written, but I just don't want to read that third book. And then last for this question, I have the Mere Visitor series by Christelle Dabot, translated by Hildegard Searle. I have really enjoyed all the books in this series. I actually have a review on all three of the first one, so I will link those down below. So far the second book is still my favorite, but I did still enjoy this third book, so it's not like I was disappointed in the third one, so I'm not going to read the fourth. I've just been reading reviews for a long time, and I was wondering, this is a very complicated series, or in terms of the plot developments. And there were some things where I was like, I don't know if this is going to work out in a way that I'm interested in. And based on reviews that I have been reading for a while now, because the fourth book has been out in the original French for quite a while, so Google Translate has been helping me out. I think the translation of the fourth one has at this point come out too, so there's even more reviews from other people, and I just think based on those, I think I was correct to think that the fourth book is not going to take things in a direction I want to see. So yeah, I'm really happy I have been reading these series. I'm very grateful to have received them for review, and I just don't think the fourth book is going to be for me. I don't know, maybe that's weird to stop when you're one book from the end of a 4-book series, but just going off of some of the more negative reviews for that one, I think I would be really frustrated and unsatisfied and annoyed by that last book. Which also, they should want reviewers who think they have the best chance of liking that book, so hopefully it's not too weird I'm doing that. Number 7, what was your favorite series finale of the year? And I have a few, and actually 2 of them I read at the very beginning of the year. One of them is Lou by Jason Reynolds. This is the 4th and final book in the Track series, which is another companion series, and I think this was my favorite in the series. I just really loved Lou as a main character. I'm realizing I have a soft spot for characters who seem like they're just the comic relief and they don't worry about things and they're never stressed, and then you find out that they actually have a lot of things they're dealing with, and a lot of maybe issues with how they see themselves or how they think others see them. And Lou is also an albino character, so he's black, but he doesn't always look like what people think black people should look like. And so the book deals with that, and I love the friendships. I just really, really loved this book. I think it was a fantastic series ender. And yeah, again, one of my favorites in the series, if not my favorite in the series. And then I also really loved Gone Crazy in Alabama by Rita Williams Garcia. This is the third and final book in the Gaithers Sisters series, and this book was like just a gut punch in a lot of ways, and it was so well done. Each book in the series kind of focuses on a different aspect of the main characters' lives, being Black at this time period, and in this case, being Black and going to visit family in the South. And it gets really dark in some places, but I think it was handled really well. I also think this book does a really good job of showing how, like, showing Delphine, the main character, who's a young girl, like, realize that sometimes adults do bad things too, or they do nonsensical things, or they hold stupid grudges. Like, basically adults can be really immature. Like, in a way it's kind of sad to see her realize this, but I think it's also very important and very satisfying to see her realize that, like, no, sometimes she knows the right thing to do. So yeah, I think that was a fantastic last book. And then the other one I want to mention is Torch by R.J. Anderson, which I won't spend a lot of time on because I've talked at length about how excited I am. We finally get a series finale, and I thought it was really good. I'll link my review on the first 2 books down below, but yeah, I just really enjoy these characters and their relationships, and I think a lot of the plot threads wrapped up in a way that was really satisfying. This wasn't a perfect book for me. There were some frustrating aspects of the story, like the way that other characters treated Ivy, our main character, but I think it makes sense for the story, and again, just very grateful to have that book. Number 8, what was the biggest cliffhanger you had in a series this year? So I have 2 answers for this one, and definitely the one that has like the most stressful or the most intense cliffhanger is The Theft of Sunlight by Intisar Kanani. Hannah even warned me about the cliffhanger in this book, and I thought I was prepared, and I was not prepared. But highly recommend this series. The last book in this kind of section of the series, I don't know if there's going to be more, but it is coming out pretty early next year or in the middle of next year, so if you pick this up now, you don't have long to wait, so please pick it up now. But yeah, I just really love this book. And then the other one I want to mention is, I guess it is kind of a cliffhanger in the sense that, like, a really dramatic thing happens at the end of the book and it's like, oh no, how is this going to affect everything else? I would consider that a cliffhanger, and that is the one for Subversive by Colleen Cowley. This is the first book in a trilogy that is kind of an alternate history. Well, I guess it's alternate contemporary, but it feels like a historical setting because of where social developments are at. They've been held back. And it's kind of a fantasy dystopian almost, because in this world there is magic, but only men are believed to be able to use it, and are allowed to train with it. And this is like really set back the women's liberation movement. So this is supposed to be, I think, in current day, but women still don't have the vote. And it reads in a lot of ways like a historical, and the end of this book is just a lot. I have a lot of feelings and a lot of questions, and I said in my Goodreads review, this is going to be one of those series where I'm like torn between wanting to find out immediately what happens and feeling like I need to recuperate in between books. But this one was very well done. Number 9 is, what is your favorite spin-off series you read this year? And both years I don't feel like I have a good answer for this one because I don't read a lot of spin-offs, but the closest I have is Song of the Crimson Flower by Julie C. Dow, which is set in the same world as Julie C. Dow's other books, so I think it kind of counts as a spin-off. I think it's listed as like book 2.5 or something, but you can read it separately from her other books, which is fortunate because I have no interest in reading her other books in this world, but I loved this one. There's a lot of romantic tropes in it that I really love, and there's also quite a few in the synopsis that I don't like, and that made me think I wouldn't like this book for a long time. But my friend Margaret from The Word Nerd, her review really convinced me that the things I don't like could be handled in a way that I did, and it was true. I loved this. I definitely want to get a copy when the paperback comes out someday, hopefully. We still don't have a release for it, but really enjoyed this one, and I'm excited to read other things by Julie C. Dow, just not the other books in this world. Number 10 is, what is your most anticipated next book in a series that you read this year that will come out next year? So basically I read a book in a series and I'm excited for the release next year of the next book, and I have a few answers for this one too. One of them is Glass Slippers by Leah Cypess. I really loved Thornwood. It was a Sleeping Beauty retelling that I think is really interesting. I think it did a lot of really interesting things with the story, and this is the Sisters Ever After series, so each of the books focuses on, I think, sisters, like, of the main characters of fairy tales, which I think is really cool. And Glass Slippers is of course the Cinderella retelling. I'm just really excited for this. I'm like really excited to read just things by Leah Cypess in general, because she also wrote The Only Story I Gave 5 Stars in The Mythic Dream, so I just have a good feeling about her as an author for me. And then I also am really excited for Tall and Dark by Susanna Roundtree. This is a spin-off to a series that I just started this year, and the reason I started it is because I saw the author blurb for this book, like not even the official Goodreads summary, which is also interesting, but the author blurb for this is just like one of my favorite things, and I'm gonna read it to you guys because I love it. Behold, the spin-off series set in the same world as Miss Sharp's monsters, featuring a young lady who sees memories of the dead, an irritable inventor, a feral ballerina, a sweet and pure himbo, and Vasily Nikolaevich Romanov, who is not having a good afterlife. That just cracks me up. I think that is one of the best descriptions I've ever seen of anything, and it worked because it made me pick up the other book, like in the original series that this is a spin-off for, so I'm so excited. Like, I was already intrigued by the feral ballerina and charmed by the himbo, but then we get to Vasily Nikolaevich Romanov, who is not having a good afterlife, and just that combination of words I think is hysterical, and I'm really excited for this book. Yeah, August 17th is when it says it's supposed to come out now, and let me look up Glass Slippers. Glass Slippers comes out April 5th of next year. And then I also wanted to mention the sequel to Forestborn, which I can actually look up the title of, by Elaine Audrey Becker. So book 2 is called Wildbound. That comes out August 30th of next year. And I just really enjoyed that first book in the duology. I think the world is really interesting. I liked the writing. I liked the characters. Yeah, I feel like my answers for these are starting to sound similar because I'm trying not to summarize the books too much. So I promise these books aren't all like too close to each other. Number 11. What is your most anticipated series to catch up with next year based on what you read in that series this year? Multiple answers again. Who's surprised? One of them is, actually I don't think any of these answers are going to be surprising. One of them is the Extraordinaries series by Melissa McShane. I really fell in love with Burning Bright when I read it a couple months ago, and then I read Wandering Sight in December this month, and I really enjoyed that one as well. I didn't love it quite as much because, for one thing, like the romance didn't work for me as well, but I really loved everything else about this book, and based on just these two books, I am really excited to continue in the series and to read basically everything Melissa McShane writes. I think she's really a good author for me. I really like the way that she does character work and settings and magic and like the romance subplots usually. I say usually when I've only read 2 books, but anyway, just really excited to continue. And then also I have I can never remember the name of the actual series. I think it's just the Crooked Rock series. And I mentioned that this was the book in the series that the synopsis appealed to me least. And I still gave it 4 stars. And I gave it 4 stars despite not really caring about the romance because the 2 leads were just really great characters in their own right. And I really liked the plot stuff and the themes. And I just feel like that's a good sign when you're reading a romance and you don't care about the romance and you still really enjoy the book. I think it's hard for authors to do that. So yeah, really looking forward to continuing that series. That is by a Karuk author. And then also I mentioned this book, The Werewolf of Whitechapel by Susanna Roundtree. This is the book that Tall and Dark is a spin-off for. This is the first book in the Miss Sharp's Monsters trilogy, and I just really enjoyed this. I loved the writing. I love the symbolism of like monstrousness and what that means in this world and how that relates to less magical monsters. You'll hear more about it when I do my December wrap-up, but can't wait to read more things from Susanna Roundtree in general, including that series. Number 12. What is your favorite series that you finished this year? So remember, I am not counting a lot of books that I could answer for this because I used them for other questions, but I wanted to give another mention to the Magical Venice series by Holly Webb. I finished this series really, really early in the year, I think January. This is the 3rd book, The Maskmaker's Daughter, which might be my favorite in the series, and this is a middle grade series set in a fantasy version of Venice, and I just really love it. I like the writing, I like the touch of magic, I like the characters. I think these books do a good job of dealing with some really dark things in a way that doesn't feel jarring with the magic and with the lightness of some other parts of the story. And I just really enjoyed this. I'm very excited to read more things from Holly Webb. I own a couple other series by her now. And then I also wanted to mention Amina's Song by Hannah Khan. As far as I know, this is the last book in this series. It's a sequel to Amina's Voice. I just love this so much. I talked about it a lot in my mid-year book breakout tag, I think, so I'll try not to spend too much time on it, but I just think the things that this book says about loving imperfect places just really hit home. I think it's something that a lot of people could identify with, if not everybody. And I love the way that Hannah Khan writes characters and family dynamics. Number 13 is, what is your favorite episodic series of the year? And I mentioned that I think this means like companion books or books where each book in the series has a self-contained story, even if it builds up to a bigger plot arc. So I wanted to give a quick mention to A Chorus Rises by Bethany C. Morrow. This is the companion sequel to A Song Below Water, which I enjoyed, but I actually liked this book even more. It's kind of a mean girl redemption arc, and I really like the way that we got more information about the Ilocos, or Elocos, I'm not quite sure how you say that, in this setting, and I just think thematically these books do a lot. I've also said that this book has more of a distinct character and plot arc, so if one if that was one issue you had with A Song Below Water, you might still enjoy this one, even if you didn't care much for book one. Another companion sequel, Much Ado About Baseball by Rajni Laraka. Midsummer's Mayhem was one of my favorite books the year I read it, and I also loved this one. I didn't love it quite as much, but I did love it a lot, and I just want Rajni Laraka to write Shakespeare retellings forever. This is one for Much Ado About Nothing, which is tied for my favorite Shakespeare play, and I did really, really love it. And finally, I wanted to mention the Books of Bayern series, which I meant to finish this year, and I didn't. But this is by far my favorite in the series so far. This is the third book, River Secrets, and we follow Raso as our main character, who I just love. He's kind of another one of those characters who is like, oh, the comic relief, and he's just always like cheerful and having a good time and poking fun, and then you realize that he actually has a lot of deep-seated like anxiety and feeling like he's not good enough, and like seeing him realize that he is good enough and that he does have things to offer the group is just really wonderful. So I really loved this book in the series. This one also has a little bit of a mystery element, which I really liked. Number 14, what is a series that you finally bailed on after holding on to it for a long time? And this is, I think, my only repeat answer, and that is the Nevermore series. I'm sorry, the Nevermore and Morgan Crow series, I'm not sure. I already talked about why, but I just am really disappointed in these books. Like, I read the second book hoping I would like it a lot more, and that didn't really I'm just really frustrated by a lot of it, and I think, like, I've read so many amazing middle grade fantasies that I don't really want to spend my time on one that I think is mediocre. Like, I do have like that FOMO a little bit because like I keep seeing people love this series and I want to love it and I want to be excited about the next books, but I just can't do it. Like, it's just not working for me. So anyway, I'm giving up on that one. Number 15, what is the series you were most surprised that you liked this year? And I have another couple answers for this one. I wanted to mention Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and the translator is Jeffrey Trusselot. And yeah, like, I had heard pretty mixed or mediocre things about this one, and I do think the first story is kind of stilted, but after that it really, I think, gets very good. I think that the way this book deals with grief and just like the emotional depth of it, I was really impressed with, and I was really glad that I liked it so much because I did buy the second in the series before reading this one, which is, you know, always a risk. But yeah, I thought this was fantastic. I had some pretty big issues with the last story and the implications of it, but I think overall I still really liked this. There's a story involving sisters in particular that just really got me like in the heart. I was like sobbing sobbing to myself as I read this. But yeah, so I thought that one was very good. And then I also wanted to mention the Books of Daltia series. This is not the one I read. This is the last book in the series. But I read Just Ella earlier this year, and it wasn't that I didn't think I would like it, but I don't know, I thought it would be like good or fine, and I actually really enjoyed it. And I had seen reviews talking about like, this is really light and sweet and nothing really fancy, and it is light and sweet in some places, but I was impressed with the depth it had in other areas. And it just has me really excited to continue the series. Again, this is the 5th one, but I didn't have the first one to show you. And then probably the biggest surprise of this bunch, and one of my most surprising books for the whole year, is Bright Smoke, Cold Fire by Rosamund Hodge. This is the first book in a duology that literally everybody hates. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say I have never heard a positive thing about this book. I'm sure there's some people out there who do like it, but I haven't found them yet. So yeah, I went into this like truthfully thinking I was not gonna like it, even though I have loved other things from this author, just because I had heard such bad things about this one. And I do see why it's a very hit or miss book for people. There's a lot going on. I think the plot can sound very complicated. Like in my wrap up, it takes me like several minutes to summarize the story, just because there's so much happening. But I think the book actually doesn't make it feel confusing. I really like the Romeo and Juliet elements. I love Rosamund Hodge's writing, and I really admire the way that she can write female main characters that are very like prickly and very, I don't know, strong in kind of stereotypical ways that I think a lot of times when authors do that, it feels very fake and very irritating, but she doesn't do that. I don't know how, but her female characters, like her characters in general, just always work for me. I think the really messy, complicated, like, friendships and alliances in this book are really great, or just like really interesting. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this, and I'm excited to read the sequel. Against all odds, I just realized I had another answer for the surprising book in a series, and that is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I have heard very mixed things about the Caraval series, and specifically mixed things that made me think I might not like this author's books. but I picked this up on a whim. I actually pre-ordered it on a whim, which was always dangerous, but I really liked this edition, and I think Barnes & Noble was having like a pre-order book sale or something. So there were extenuating circumstances, but I was still nervous about it, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really liked the writing and the atmosphere and like the characters. I think Evangeline is a character who it would have been very easy for her to come off as very irritating and like naive to the point of stupidity. And I don't feel like she was most of the time. Like, she makes mistakes, but they're not, I didn't like hate being in her head because she was being so frustrating. I think Jax is a really interesting character. I am very intrigued to see where book 2 goes. There's a couple things near the end where I'm like, oh, I wish the author hadn't gone that direction. I was hoping she wouldn't, but we'll see where things go in the sequel. But yeah, was very pleasantly surprised by this one. Number 16 is, what is a series that you meant to catch up with or finish this year that you didn't? I have two very embarrassing answers. One of them is The Hidden Palace by Helene Becker. This is the sequel to The Golem and the Jinni, which is one of my favorite books, and I have been waiting for this book for years. Like, I think this is one of the first books I think I added to my Goodreads want to read. I've been waiting for a very long time, and I haven't read this book yet. I think I'm nervous because I love the first one so much that I'm just like not sure how the sequel is gonna go, but I need to read it. I need to prioritize it. I just have to. And then my other embarrassing answer is Redemptor by Jordan Fueko. Ray Barrett was my favorite book of last year, so somebody explain to me why I haven't read the sequel yet. I don't know. But I definitely want to next year. I'm gonna, like, I promise. Should I promise? I think I should. I promise that I'm gonna read this book in 2022, or y'all can yell at me because I really want to read it. And finally, number 17 is, what is a series you finished this year that you think is greater than the sum of its parts? And I love this question, and I think I even mentioned this in the wrap-up where I talked about this book, so you guys kind of know my answer already, but that is the Lady Helen trilogy, or the Dark Days Club series. I finished this series this year, and I think it is just one of the most well-constructed series I've read. It's so good. Like, this is one of those series, like the question suggests, where every book in the series is not individually a favorite. Like, I think I gave every book in this series either 4 or 4.5 stars. So none of them were 5 stars from me. But as a whole, this is a 5-star series for me because I just think the character work is fantastic. The plot is gripping. Like, I mentioned in this book that I was so into it and I was so like stressed that my chest was actually hurting as I read about these fictional characters. I think the romance is like the good kind of angst. I'm very picky about angst, but I really loved it. I think the setting and like the historical period is used in a really interesting way, and this is something I'm realizing I just really appreciate in historical fantasy, when magic does change the time period, obviously. Like, it does change the way some of these social issues, like the way people interact in terms of gender and things like that. Like, it does affect things, but I also like it when the historical period does matter for the story, because otherwise why would you set it then? Anyway, so I just think this is a really great series. I would highly recommend it, and definitely the one I wanted to answer for this question. So that is my series book tag. I know this has been a very long video, but I had quite a few like multiple answers, so hopefully I was able to keep them somewhat brief. I don't think I did. But please comment down below and let me know if you have read and enjoyed any of these books. Let me know a series that you're really loving. Let me know a series that you maybe finally gave up on, because that can be a very freeing experience. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!